Hi, it's David Eklund, davideklund.com. Welcome to Resilient Legacy, Expat Dad Coaching, and one of our culture chats here in the library. Today we're going to continue with The Culture Map by Aaron Meyer. Last time we discussed the first two of 8 cultural dimensions, communicating and evaluating, and today we're going to talk about leading and deciding. So leading goes from egalitarian to hierarchical. And it's a little bit deceptive because everybody thinks it's fashionable nowadays to be egalitarian. So if you ask people straight out, what do you prefer? Most likely they will say egalitarian. However, if you really drill down and get to the specifics, do you prefer this or that quality in a boss? In this kind of situation, would you prefer that the boss did this or that? You're going to see very pronounced differences. For example, in East Asia or Nigeria, the boss is relatively more godlike than in the very egalitarian societies of Scandinavia. So this idea of power distance between various levels of the hierarchy is what's being described there. Now, when you look at history, you can see that these tendencies go really far back. It's quite fascinating. For example, the Vikings. The Vikings, known for imposing their will, as it were, from above on the societies that they were plundering, were within themselves highly egalitarian. So you can see that reflected hundreds of years later in these societies that used to be Vikings, so the Scandinavian societies. And then more broadly, in the Germanic tribes and in what is the area that Protestantism took hold in, which is a more egalitarian form of Christianity, where it's about the individual's relationship to the text without this hierarchical structure intermediating it. This is also now coloring the current cultural norms, as compared to the places where the Roman Empire ruled and where Catholicism then later took hold with its hierarchical structure. Those places tend to be more hierarchical. In fact, if you, this is really impressive. So this is a chart from only within Europe, going from Sweden at about 7% to Spain at close to 60%, so almost 10 times more. And it was a question of whether they agreed to with this statement or not. It is important for a manager to have at hand precise answers to most of the questions that subordinates may raise about their work. Okay, so within Europe, you have really like an order of magnitude difference. So don't be fooled. There are big differences there. Okay, one last thing about leading before we move on to deciding, and that is this idea of level hopping. Is it okay for me to schedule a meeting with someone 2 levels below or above me without checking with the person in between in the hierarchy? If it is, that's a more egalitarian society. If it is not, then that's a more hierarchical. So if you're in a more hierarchical society than you're used to, be careful about that. Speak with people on your level, and if you want to go up or down, make sure you know what the proper way of doing that is in your culture. And then conversely, if you're moving into a more egalitarian society, you're going to need to adjust to that. Okay, so let's move on to deciding. Now, the first thing about deciding is that it's different than leading. And though it is the case that a more hierarchical society is going to have a more top-down deciding style, and a more egalitarian society is going to have a more consensus-based deciding style, that's not always the case. And the big exception is Japan. Japan is very hierarchical, and it also is very consensus-based. And so they have this very interesting idiosyncratic system of how they marry those two things together. I don't know Japan that well. I've never been there myself. I live in Germany, and Germany is also this way, where it's relatively hierarchical compared to, say, America, and also relatively consensus-based compared to America, where I'm from. And so I have more experience here. So you do feel that there is more of a distance, that your boss isn't just your buddy. But at the same time, the boss is not going to just make a decision and impose it on everybody. The boss is really going to talk to everybody and get buy-in and make sure everybody's in on it. And then when the decision's made, it's a decision with a capital D, and then you execute. and you don't question it. You stay the course. Okay? So a lot of upfront investing in buy-in, and then you go. Okay? And that reflects the more, the longer and more stable history of Germany as opposed to America. It's much younger. It hasn't really, we haven't known what to expect long term in America. And so we have someone that can make decisions on the fly and then dynamically adjust as circumstances unfold. So you don't have time to get all the consensus, because what's the sense in investing all that time up front if you have no idea what's going on within the time frame that's under consideration? So we have a more, again, egalitarian sense of who the boss is. There's not such a big power distance there, but he's going ahead, or she is going ahead and making decisions. Okay, so that just, again, sheds light on this difference between the capital D decision and decision with a lowercase d, where it's more provisional. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this, found it useful, and I'll see you in the next Culture Chat.